like in high school, we did get like we were taught Chinese, as in Cantonese, but everyone spoke English. So we didn't really have a necessity to really learn how to communicate in Cantonese, even though our dad always, growing up, I remember he would always be like, "喂，新聞睇中文啊，你要睇 subtitle 啊嘛，你唔睇你點學啊？"
So for me, I think that was a big thing where I didn't know what to call myself because I was kind of in between both worlds. But then I think growing up, we kind of just wanted to be a part of different cultures. We didn't really want to be part of only one community. So then that kind of like made me question like, okay, I'm not, fully integrated into the Pakistani culture, but I'm also not fully integrated into the local culture, so I'm kind of somewhere in between. So how do I talk to people about myself?
Welcome to Proudly Asian, a podcast series that tells bold and proud stories of Asians by Asians. My name is Isabel, your podcast host, and I'm here to find stories that challenge biases we face every day. There's never just one way to look at Asians. This podcast will take you through a deep dive into the life stories, struggles, and triumphs of young Asians around the world. On today's episode, we have Adam and Zaref Khan. Born and raised in Hong Kong, Zaref and Adam are Pakistani photo and video creatives who grew up together at local schools, but have very different lived experiences as Pakistani Hongkongers. They join us to talk about how they navigated their complex identities, South Asian representation, and their own creative journeys. All right, welcome back to Proudly Asian. Now, sitting next to me for the first time ever, I think, we have two guests, not just one guest. And today joining me are Adam and Zaref. So welcome to Proudly Asian, Adam and Zaref. How are you?
Thank you for having us, Isabel. I think for myself, I'm doing pretty good. I work
You
from
can't
home
speak
today,
for...
so I have that luxury.
Did you have a good day?
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's productive, we were kind of between quarters at work, so it's just like more admin work.
Like a lot of planning or...
Yeah, that kind of stuff. So like brain power not really utilized, so it's good that we're doing this now.
Good. Then we can take advantage of you.
Sure.
Go ahead, beat him while he's down.
Yeah. And just for our listeners to get to know a little bit more about you guys, maybe we can start off with the basics, which is tell us about your background. Who are you? What are you? And where did you grow up?
You want to go ahead first?
Sure. My name is Zaref. We are Pakistani Hongkongers. That means, well, our granddad first came here to Hong Kong, so I guess we consider it third generation. Born and raised here, went to local schools, went to local unis, working in local firms, local international firms. We are also creatives. I'm a photographer and Adam is a videographer, but we'll get into the details of that in a bit.
Yep. Sounds good. And Adam?
Pretty much he just covered it for both of us. I think the only interesting thing is, even though, we're not that far in our age gap, it's just about a year and a half. Despite that, the earlier part of our childhood was pretty much we were existing in the same universe. Everything we did was together. And then there was this part of our teenage as well that we pretty much did a lot of things together. Then we go into fast forward to university. That's where, pretty much all of our experiences were completely different. The direction that he went to getting into university directly was very different than mine, where I had to do an associate degree for 2 years before getting into university. So that was a completely different experience for me versus for him. And then I think even for coming to our creative endeavors, it kind of started off with very different motivations and timelines. And then we kind of, in the present day, we're kind of joining them together. And I think brings us to today.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. we're definitely going to talk more about like your growing up experiences and how like there's a lot that you guys share in common, but at the same time you guys also went through like a little individual journey of your own, and which would kind of like informed like how you see maybe identities or like life a little differently. So we'll touch on that in a little bit. So you both you just mentioned you both grew up in Hong Kong in a Pakistani household. So I mean, just I just want to know like what it was really like, what you had for breakfast, you know, how was school, and were your parents strict and all?
It's very specific, but do you want to go first?
I think, well, if I had to just kind of go back to my memory bank, I think childhood was pretty great. I think we had I think it was mainly because we had the two of us, you know, to do everything together, whatever we would play at home, outside, we would just kind of do things together. So I think childhood for the majority of it was pretty good. You know, our parents would always just kind of be there to support us, you know, just trying to get us whatever toys and stuff that we would need. And it was great. And then I think for breakfast, I think that's an interesting one, because for me, my favorite breakfast, and it's something that I feel like a lot of my, I guess, like things that I like are based on stuff my grandfather likes. So he always loved, it's basically, I mean, it's called paratha, and that's kind of like greasy roti with scrambled eggs. That's pretty much it. So that's what was pretty much the go-to breakfast in our family for a very long time.
Nice. And Zaref was like giving us a bit of a funny look when you said
The
like
support
parents
part.
were supportive, so you had a different take.
Error 404.
He went for the official
We have to talk
answer.
about which range of childhood that was.
Yeah, true.
You know, where did our consciousness become alive?
Yes, different phases. No, it's funny because last night I was just practicing, answers to these questions, and I was wondering what was the food the breakfast that we grew up with. I'm glad you said that, because I was going to say exactly the same thing. What was the question again?
I mean, just basically like any anecdotes, like growing up in Hong Kong. What was it really like for you? I was even gonna ask like if you guys would have like bola bao for breakfast, but
Yes, we did actually. We did every day, every morning. I distinctly remember, and is, you know, this is what's interesting, is that whenever I speak to locals here that are similar generation to us, they don't necessarily assume that we've lived the same experiences, even though we are local, right? But then whenever we talk about things like Tolo or like Pokemon cards or Yu-Gi-Oh
Like
cards,
Yo-Yo, Beyblades.
Beyblade, like those, that there was a whole era where they used to sell like these plastic domes that allowed you to play Beyblade in them, and you would battle each other. And in the playground, like that was a daily thing where kids used to go down and fight, and you know, whoever's Beyblade lasted the longest, they won. So there was all these kind of like very local toys and activities.
wow.
So I think growing up, like I feel like golden era moments like those are kind of what defines our local experience as children. And I mean, I also do definitely think that the essence of that is kind of lost now, because digitalization and everything, kids don't really go out much.
They're like stuck to their iPads, like playing online games with like some random stranger.
No, I think that is definitely like one of the core memories of our childhood, was being able to go outside and play with other kids. But that also reminds me, it wasn't always, you know, sunshine and rainbows doing that. There were also times where that was, I guess, the initial sort of experience to, you know, people around us, kids our age, who didn't really like us and we didn't understand why.
So
like
classmates?
No, like the people in our neighborhood that we used to play in the playground. So I think it was at a certain age that we started to feel like there were some local kids who would try to bully us. And we never understood why. You know, for us, it was just like, oh, we don't get why they're doing that. And then I think there was just one day.
I knew you were going to go there.
Should I go there? So I mean, I'll keep it relatively friendly,
go,
but I'll go
fine.
there. But one day we were just kind of in the garden, and we there was a plastic bottle somebody threw at us, And we were like, oh, where did this bottle come from? You can correct me if my memory is wrong.
I don't even remember the plastic bottle part. I just remember what everything happened afterwards.
Afterwards.
I don't know how it started.
So we get a plastic bottle thrown at us, and we're like, oh, where the hell did this come from? And we look up, and there's like a little footbridge close to where the garden is, and we see the same group of local kids that would try to bully us every now and then. So we're like, you know what? Today's the day. We have to do something about it.
Yeah, for context, they've been annoying us. They've been bullying us for a very long time at that point, right? So it was like almost we had a low key fear of playing in the playground because then we have this kind of like danger in our minds that are like that's
And
gonna
how old
ruin
were
us.
you back then?
I think we were younger than 10.
Wow.
Definitely younger than 10.
Younger than 10. We were probably 8 and 6.
Yeah, I think
About
I
8
think
and
that-
6.
Yeah,
Wow.
you're right.
So you had a common understanding that something has to be done.
Something has to be
Yeah.
done. No,
I
we
mean,
literally,
in a very
I don't think
like
we communicated
in a
We
very
just, like-
primal way.
You
Yeah,
just exchange eye contact. Like,
I think
Let's go.
that's exactly what happened. We watched too many Bollywood movies at that time, you know.
So we chased after them. We tried to hunt them down.
Yeah, we actually did.
Yeah, and then we just kind of like cornered them, found their Tylo, their big boss, and we were like, all
There's
right,
a
what's
big
your?
boss.
Yeah, it's like little kids.
Oh my god.
And we
Little
just-
kids fight, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
So,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
that's what happened.
Yeah, that's what happened. Since that day, there was a mutual agreement that they don't mess with us, we don't mess with them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was like your maybe like very first experience to resolve conflict.
Yes.
You just fired out.
Exactly.
I'm glad it didn't go down like the whole like the other kids is like, oh my god, like they attacked us, and
Yeah.
then like the parents step in and
No, I think in schools or anywhere, I guess, other than that, everything was relatively civil.
Mm-hmm.
Like especially in classrooms, we never really got into sort of any bouts with people. So I think that was fine. I feel like just that experience was kind of like the initial one, and then I think there were maybe a couple here and there, but that was like it was very mild compared to this.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Like, I mean, like, even like for some of our previous podcast episodes, like some of our guests also pointed out that, like, as kids, like, kids don't tend to see differences much. Like, they see how they could bond with each other. Like, for example, like you mentioned, you guys had like shared interests,
Yeah.
and just with Pokemon, like people would just completely forget, like,
Yeah.
oh, what skin color you are,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
languages you usually speak, or where you're from. That's the beautiful thing about like children.
Yeah.
Until maybe like in the Hong Kong context, like there will be some parents stepping in and say, oh yeah, don't like be friends with like
Yeah.
them, and then like the children, they start growing up like having their own biases as well. But then like what you
Yeah.
mentioned, any time before 10 was like the time when kids could really connect as
Right.
kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I definitely believe it's a lot about nurture, you know. And I mean, we can definitely agree. Kids can't really be like racist, right?
No.
It's more about what's taught at home.
Mhm.
So I think even in those moments when we face these kind of situations, I think probably the reason why parents didn't really do anything is because the kids probably were too scared. And it makes you wonder like what their home environment was, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Because there's a memory that popped in my head. It was you remember this one guy in our building who would always call us a chajai.
I don't remember that.
It was like kind of relatively middle-aged guy.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what I remember in my memory is that he would say these things to us, and we would just laugh at it because we don't know what it means. At that time, we
Yeah.
didn't know what it meant, so we just laugh about it. And there was one time we went home, and then we told our dad that he says, there's this guy who says this, and we were just saying it with a laughing face. And then it was at that time that our dad was like, "This is not funny. Like, you shouldn't let him say that to you." So that was like, we didn't know what it meant, even for us, because like even though it's derived from a word that we use all the time at home, we didn't really put it together that that's what it meant. So I think that was, I guess, like the first, also the instance where it was like, oh, I guess there are certain things that we can't just be okay with. But no, I think just speaking on that point a little bit, I think also from his perspective, perhaps also he wasn't completely aware that what the
Yeah.
meaning of that was, right?
True.
Because then for me, if I had to think about it in hindsight, there were a lot of instances growing up where I would use certain racial slurs and I didn't even know that they were sort of, that, well, today they would probably get me canceled. But back then, you're like, you don't know what this word even means.
Yeah.
You're just saying it until somebody tells you that, hey, it's wrong. And then it really depends that, okay, how do you respond to that? Are you going to be oh, it's just a word, I can say whatever I want to say. Who are you to stop me from saying that? Or B, you're like, oh, I didn't know that this was offensive to a group of people, so I'm going to stop using it from now on, right? So it was that kind of scenario. And, even though we are an ethnic minority, it doesn't mean that, we are pure from making these kind of mistakes.
Yeah.
That's true.
I also think our high school experience also quite unique because we went to schools at that time. They used to be called designated schools or something like that. That's when the government created or like assigned specific schools that would have English medium so that non-Chinese local kids could be studying there. I think the government scrapped that kind of like naming because that just meant that non-Chinese kids could only go to certain specific schools. Like our second brother, he went to Queen's College and
Third brother. You mean.
Third, yeah, our second.
Well,
so,
first, second, third.
well, yeah, the third brother. He went to Queen's College, and that's not really known for being a non-Chinese housing school. So I think that could only happen because of government initiatives to try and make it a little bit more inclusive for non-Chinese students to go into like more.
He was probably, I think, the first or second non-local student that school has ever had, I think.
Yeah.
But also, it wasn't easy to get in, though.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work for our parents to get all the relevant referrals from the teachers and go through all that to figure out, okay, what is it that will help my son get to this school that will set him for the future. Back in our time, our parents didn't really know that. At that time, it was still that designated schools for ethnic minorities. So that's kind of what we grew up with. But then, since for a younger brother, it's completely different. His life experience is totally different than ours.
Yeah.
Would you say in terms of like education in Hong Kong is actually like for ethnic minorities, they still have to navigate maybe more barriers to get into kind of like a normal school that local kids or local Chinese kids go to?
I personally believe there's two elements to that, right? One is, I still don't understand this, but first of all, like we all know that it's a very competitive market. Kids nowadays, well, my wife teaches at a kindergarten and they have to be prepped for interviews at like very young ages, very
before they could even talk.
A lot of my colleagues
it's a very rough world out there for kids. God. So there's like all there's a system and there's a way to get kids to best schools and stuff. And so our parents obviously didn't know, they weren't in those kind of like groups and circles to know these kind of information. So I think it is the barrier of awareness and the resources to know about these kind of things. And I also do think Cantonese, I mean, it's definitely something to talk about because if you're talking about schools that are band 1, then you need to be able to know a certain level of Chinese or Cantonese. Otherwise, how do you maintain competitiveness as a student to get into school when there's already so much competition? Local kids are all fighting with each other for spots at these top schools,
That's true. Like, I mean, earlier we mentioned a little bit about like in the job recruitment space, like it's always that elimination mindset. And from what you just described with like school application and admission, it also is going by a little bit of that mindset as in like maybe two candidates could be having completely the same qualifications, but maybe like but this kid doesn't speak Cantonese. And that's already enough of a reason to like go for the other one.
No, I think I totally agree. I think, on a base level, there's already a very high competition, right? And then on top of that, you add the layer of, but you're not a local here. So you're already carrying that extra chip on your shoulder to be like, okay, now I have to really prove myself, to whoever, whether it's the hiring manager, whether it's the principal, the schools. I mean, I don't know. Maybe right now the system's a little bit different because the number of schools and the number of students are so low. So I wonder if that level of competition still exists the same. But I'm pretty sure, obviously, on that elite level, of schools, it's probably still there.
True. I mean, like, I guess like these days there's also like that more, maybe slightly more representation or visibility of like the contributions of ethnic minorities as well. Like I remember seeing some of the news segments featuring Pakistani police officers who speak Cantonese. So maybe
some
there's
of them we know quite well, actually.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Oh wow!
We actually, with one of them, we studied in
together.
mosque. Like we grew up basically together. He was a really funny guy, though.
Interesting person.
You know how he was growing up. Like, how the hell did he become a police officer? You know,
So he was kind of like a
he was an interesting guy.
he caused trouble.
Well, not in terms of causing trouble, more like the opposite, where it was like he just was different than everyone else.
He was different.
Okay.
you
It was
know?
very, I would say he was very one track mind. Like he would put his mind on
Yeah.
something and he would really just kind of hyper fixate on
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
kind
Maybe
of
that's
thing.
how
Yeah.
he made it.
Yeah, I mean, there are
Yeah.
probably some traits that makes him a
Yeah.
good officer. You know?
Yeah. Wow, that's so interesting. So, I mean, from what you just described, like, do you think growing up, like, you had a lot more like scrutiny or pressure, like, to maybe like sort of even represent your community? Because like maybe you grew up in an environment or like you went to schools where like the majority would be like Hong Kong Chinese kids, right? So did you ever feel like there was that pressure of like, oh, you have to behave, otherwise someone is gonna be like, oh yeah, like your whole Pakistani community is just like
Yeah.
this or that, XYZ.
Yeah. I mean, I know I can definitely talk a lot about this because when I got to uni as the first batch of DAC, obviously no one in our family has ever been to uni. So I had literally zero reference points for what to do, how to do, where to do what. And so when I got into uni, obviously there's a lot of things I didn't understand. First of all, which faculty I got into. I was just happy I got a degree. I was just happy I was getting into uni, you know? I remember very, very vividly, first day of uni, there was orientation, like they have a welcoming thing. They're like, welcome to the Faculty of Engineering. I'm like, what? I'm in engineering? I thought I'm making games. I thought that's what I signed up for. But I mean, later I realized why I'm in engineering, because there's coding, there's design, and so there's like all of them kind of comes under the umbrella of engineering. So that getting into uni and realizing that everyone else in my degree is very local, and for engineers, people who are very logic oriented, language isn't necessarily their strong suit, so they would always prefer not to speak English. And I tried initially to come up as that, maybe that international guy that just came to Hong Kong kind of angle, you know? Because, you know, it depends how people see you, then they would react to you. Like, people in Hong Kong do speak English. It's just the way they see you, right? Because once they found out I was local, but I didn't speak Cantonese, they're like, it's kind of awkward because I don't know how to talk to him. Do I speak to him Cantonese or not? You know? Because at that time, I didn't speak Cantonese well. Like, in high school, we did get, like, we were taught Chinese, as in Cantonese, but everyone spoke English. So we didn't really have a necessity to really learn how to communicate in Cantonese, even though our dad always, growing up, I remember he would always be like, "喂，新聞睇中文啦，你要睇 subtitle 啊嘛，你唔睇你點學啊？" You know? So
So your parents really emphasized having to pick up
yes,
Cantonese.
our dad
Mainly our
always,
dad. 'Cause
yeah.
he was in Hong Kong for quite a lot of years, so he was already quite fluent at it.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously as well, like we were as kids, you're rebellious. So whatever your parents say, you're not gonna do that, right?
It's like,
So-
yeah, Pearl was more interesting.
Yeah. Exactly. So didn't really speak Cantonese until I was in that environment, and then I was like, at first I was in denial. So I did not want to really hang out with my classmates. I didn't want to do anything with them, and I skipped most of my classes actually. And I was just focused on basketball. Well, another fun fact: we both grew up playing basketball very seriously.
Yeah. Well, that's another topic we'll get into.
We'll
I
get
think.
into
I feel
that,
like there's
but-
a lot to say
Yes.
about that.
It definitely defined
Yeah,
us.
no, definitely.
But then, I used to play basketball, and I was on probation after first semester because I didn't get good grades. I don't think I ever let my parents see that letter. Because
So you just like signed it.
I was waiting for that letter. I just went to the letter box and I took it out.
Oh wow.
And so first year or two not being able to speak Cantonese and struggling was tough. I kind of understood what people were saying, but I didn't have the confidence yet to speak it. But I think just somehow over the course of those first 2 years, me being hyper vigilant and aware about what people are saying and trying to like in my mind process and learn as we went through the semesters, I somehow got to a point where I think some kind of switch changed, and then I was just speaking Cantonese confidently with people. I think if I look back, I think it was probably this point of like not caring if I'm making mistakes, actually owning up to that, and just letting people know, hey, you know me, I'm trying, I am learning Cantonese, and I'm clearly speaking with you in Cantonese. So I'm choosing your comfortable language, that what you're comfortable in. So I'm definitely gonna make mistakes. I will ask you though, and you can teach me and you can help me improve. I'm more than willing to do that. So I think that's how it changed for me in uni.
That is such a nice kind of like mindset shift. And I think for a lot of like language learners, they would also agree that like when you stop worrying about making mistakes and just speak it, like things change. And I can imagine like your classmates probably were quite happy that you were trying. Right?
And I remember specifically, so you know how in Hong Kong unis, there are these 周嘛 and 周爸.
Oh,
it's like a whole orientation like culture where
like the team
leader,
yeah.
the seniors basically.
Right.
So I remember the first year when I got in, like I got really close to a couple of them, and they were like very nice. They guided me and everything. And I remember, I think 2 years later, whenever I would meet them, they're like, 哇，你中文突然之間咁好嘅，發生咗咩事啊？哇，點解咁好嘅？ blah blah blah. And it was funny to me because I felt like nothing really changed much, but maybe because for the longest time everything was in my head, and when I suddenly let it come out, like for me it felt like, oh, why is there such a big difference in treatment?
Yeah, it's kind of cool, like to see maybe Hong Kongers they start easing up when like you speak a few Cantonese.
Interesting you say
that. Oh, you're Hong Kong,
Interesting you say that. For me, it was in a sense it was similar. After high school, I didn't get the grades to get into university. So obviously that was a big blow. I was like, oh, my older brother first time he got it. Naturally, I should be able to do it as well. I should be able to achieve it. But I didn't. That was like a big blow to my I guess my self-confidence. And I guess my whole perception of, how good or how smart I was. So then I think going into an associate degree in HQ space, I was already like not in a great, mental headspace. I was like, oh, I have no idea what I'm going to be faced with. I don't know what I need to aim to achieve. And I just wasn't feeling great about myself, right? So the first year, I think, in HQ space I felt like I isolated myself a lot. I didn't really like try to make friends. I would just I was like, there's a chip on my shoulder. My parents have to pay for this out of their pockets. And I'm going to have to make sure that I,
like where you didn't want to be.
Yeah. So the first year was very isolated. I would just, go to the campus, go to the classes, try to put effort in it, and then come back home and just kind of repeat that over and over.
And play League of Legends.
Yeah, I mean, at that time I needed an escape, and video games.
You escaped.
Yeah. So the thing, I mean, we'll get into this after this part, but
sure.
I think throughout, and I think in the second year, there was this one time where I was in the library studying for a microeconomics test that was coming up. And the whole library was full. There was just this one small desk that was free, and I just went there and I just sat there, I was studying. And then there was another group of students that come in and they're just trying to find a place to sit. And the only empty space was around my table. So they come in and they sit down and, they're kind of discussing in Cantonese, what to study for the test. And I was kind of overhearing them. It turns out they were studying the same thing that I was studying for. And I knew what we had to study. So, I just heard their question. I just responded to them like, oh, I think, you should just do these chapters. And then they were just like mind blown. They're like, so you can understand what we're saying? I'm like, yeah, I can kind of understand. So they go to another room where some of their other friends are studying. And they tell all of them, they're like, oh there's this guy, he can speak Cantonese. And then one of the guys, he just runs out. He was like, oh, hey, I'm Andy. Like, And,
Can we be friends?
Yeah, I was like, that's so cool. Like, what else do you do? I'm like, oh, I play basketball. He's like, oh, I play basketball too. Let's play basketball
wow.
together.
Andy, the insurance guy.
Yeah, so
Oh wow, that
Andy
was
now-
the origin story of
Yeah.
So
that.
Andy is a real guy.
He's a real guy.
Real
He's
guy.
a real guy. He
Sounds
is,
like a made-up name, but no.
yeah, he has played a pivotal role in my life.
Interesting.
Wow,
Because
that
he's
is
now,
so nice.
yeah, he's an insurance agent now, and he was the one who helped me when I had my shoulder injury back in university. So I think for me, it was that kind of experience that gave me a little bit of confidence that, oh, you know what, I shouldn't really shy away from just trying to get along with
Yeah.
people and, telling them who I am. And then with that same group, we formed like a study group, and we would actually come to HKU library and we would study overnight for exams.
Wow.
And they helped me because they were actually a lot smarter than I was. I just knew what chapters to study for in that instance. So they actually helped me with my grades a lot, and I learned to get along with them.
Right.
And I think from that point, it gave me that little bit of confidence that I needed to really kind of start talking to other people, letting them know who I am.
Wow.
And I made a lot of good friends. That still I feel like the friends that I made in HQ Space are more, I guess, close to me than the ones that I've made afterwards in City University. So it's very interesting how that trajectory was, and I think from that point on, it did change my own, I guess, perception of how I can be in a social setting.
Wow. So that was really the moment that really changed the course of
Yeah,
your studies at
yeah.
HKU Space. And I mean, I love how like you guys are talking about like both your experience in terms of embracing the Cantonese language, but then like the circumstances are also very different because like you kind of had no choice.
Yeah.
Like I mean, you were just like surrounded by people like that, and you too, but it was kind of like in this like accidental moment
Yeah.
that you discovered maybe you
have
should try.
powers.
Yeah, so it arrives at this question, which is like like how you see yourselves and your identity. Would you say you're Hong Konger, or like how would you put that really?
I've gone through multiple phases of trying to understand my identity. Sometimes triggered from external things, but sometimes just having too much time,
Yeah. COVID.
To overthink your identity.
Yeah, COVID. Yeah, it was probably a combination of having too much time and like throwing yourself in different experiences, initially in uni, whenever I told people like, oh, I grew up here or I'm born and raised here, then they would have an expectation that I need to know Cantonese, right? And so sometimes I would realize maybe I'm what is that saying? Biting more than you can chew, because then I'm like giving too much information away, and now I have to like live up to that, right? So then I experimented not telling people that. And then I experimented just saying, oh yeah, like I'm international. Oh, actually, I'm like, I came from Pakistan. Like, actually, I'm from UK. I have a British passport, so I'm British. So I've experimented with different things. And then after uni, obviously, you don't have that much pressure of having to like talk to so many people, right? So then when I started working at a local company doing programming, a logistics company, I think that was quite pivotal for me because they were very local people, just like doing work, right? Day in, day out. And so when I came in the office and, when people heard, oh, there's a Pakistani guy, he speaks Cantonese, but then like he also doesn't really like, I don't know what the deal with him is. So then it was kind of a moment for me to start like educating people about like where I'm from, who I am, where is Pakistan? Is it India? Is it Arab? What is it, And so I think that those conversations kind of also helped me assimilate into an identity of like, yeah, okay, I don't have to run away from like representing myself, because people are curious, especially in the workplace, because that was kind of my first legitimate work. And so I had to learn how to like work efficiently, as well as being able to get help from other people as colleagues, help each other. So you have to develop bonds at work. right? And so you have to show, I guess for me, I learned I had to show some kind of like transparency about myself so that there's not much mystery, because when there's mystery and people don't understand you, people are afraid to speak to you, communicate with you, asking for your help. Because I remember specifically, there were like 2 or 3 Indian colleagues who were from India, like they were hired externally, and I remember very distinctly that nobody really talked to them in the office. Like their wives would make their lunches, and they would just lunchtime, as soon as there was some time, microwave their food, sit at their desk, finish their food, watch YouTube or whatever, and that would be a daily thing. No one really like talked to them other than work related stuff. And I found that quite sad, actually, because, and it also made me want to like, okay, I will try my best to like even speak to them, because I understand why local people don't want to speak to them. It's kind of a lot to think, okay, what topics can I talk about with these people? They're from a different culture. They don't really speak Cantonese. Maybe our Canto slang doesn't translate well into English. So I'm assuming there could be a lot of reasons for that. So then, working there, the identity thing of representing myself, and then afterwards, not working there anymore, and then switching careers to UX, and working at a startup under international leader. That then made me go into a different side where I'm more exploring my international identity, and then living with 2 French guys, moving out of home. That was interesting. Then the comparison of these international people who were like, "Ooh, Hong Kong, cool stuff, neon lights, blah blah blah." I'm like, "Oh, nice, yeah." And I've seen this. Like, they're taking down the neon lights, by the way, and they're like, "No, we have to take pictures." So yeah, a lot of different phases of identity, right? And I mean, I strongly believe that identity is evolving.
Yeah.
You never have a fixed identity. I think it would be sad if you fix your identity in one place, because that's not how we naturally are as humans.
It's quite limiting, because like you can't be like, oh, I am Hong Kongers, I have to act and speak like a Hong Kong. You're kind of like limiting yourself in a box as well.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, I think the other day I came across a post on Reddit. The question was, do you find it irritating when people introduce themselves as like American Hong Konger, American Hong Konger, or British Hong Konger,
or Hong
something
Kong
like
British.
that? Yeah. And a lot of people in the comments were like, "There's no problem if you are trying to actually, be a part of that culture that you're calling yourself. Like if you're calling yourself a Hong Konger, but you keep yourself away from the local culture, then that's irritating." So for me, I think that was a big thing where I didn't know what to call myself, because I was kind of in between both worlds. Like I don't think we fully belonged into our Pakistani culture and always just being around people from our community. Like, yes, your early years in our primary school, we were around those kind of kids. But then I think growing up, we kind of just wanted to be a part of different cultures. We didn't really want to be part of only one community. So then that kind of like made me question, like, okay, I'm not fully integrated into the Pakistani culture, but I'm also not fully integrated into the local culture, so I'm kind of somewhere in between. So how do I talk to people about myself? And I think that was the case until probably until university, like late university. That's when I felt like I had made enough local friends, I've made enough international friends. I had some Pakistani friends as well. So I was like, you know what? Now I kind of feel like I'm a bridge that connects, friend groups from different areas. And I kind of enjoyed doing that. I kind of had friends, for example, with Jess and the international community in university, and then with my local friends as well. Then I was like, you know what? Why don't we just bring these 2 groups together, let them all just, exist with each other. And we had a lot of like really great conversations in a lot of like, our time. We would just have nothing to do in the evenings, and we'd just go outside and hang out. And that would just turn up in a lot of interesting conversations of like, how the American mindset is different than, the local mindset. And, sometimes it would just help me figure out, that I don't need to shy away from telling people that, oh, I'm Pakistani, but I grew up in Hong Kong. Instead, I think the more I grow up and the more confidence I get from just, pushing myself to achieve things that I want to achieve, that confidence then helps me figure out that, oh, me being a unique, I guess, person in this community actually helps me.
Yeah.
Because then people remember me easier. and they can associate me with the things that I want to be known for easier. So I think it's really about like trying to figure out, okay, one, whatever you want to be good at, just be really good at that. Eventually people will know you and make those associations themselves. That's not something that's in your control. And I think that's kind of how it started with us and basketball. I think I don't know exactly how it was for you, but for me, basketball was that one thing where I was like, I need to hold on to this and I need to be the best I can be. And I want everyone in school to know me as the best basketball player in school. And I think, I don't know, maybe
like,
for
you
you.
the best? Like, aren't you the best?
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? Like, I think both of us, to a certain degree, had this drive, and we would just, every summer when obviously we didn't have school anymore, we would just go out and just train, in whatever the weather was, we would just go and train each other. And we just keep pushing ourselves every year. And then we did reach that point, in both of when he was in final year of his in high school, we were in the same high school. And we had obviously a lot of people debating, who was the better,
the
player.
ultimate GOAT debate.
Yeah, the GOAT debate. When will the younger brother dethrone his older
when will he
brother?
surpass him?
There was a moment, actually. There was a great story.
There was a moment.
So it was actually like a development that people were following.
Yeah, people
yeah,
actually
yeah.
subscribe to it.
No way.
And I think
Daily content, recess time, lunchtime.
Like bets were made.
I guess the best way to describe this is in high school, in his last year, I guess I was in Form 4, he was in Form 6. And every year we have an interclass basketball competition, 3-on-3 competition. And that year, we both ended up facing each other's class. Yeah. And it was, I think, semifinals or
I don't remember,
something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the game that had the most audience that
There's
showed
a lot
up
of
to
people
that
that
game.
were watching.
And even like his friends were kind of like, everyone loves the underdog story. So his friends were rooting for me.
Yeah, they were. I mean, people hated me for a specific reason.
Yeah.
They're like, this guy's too cocky, man. I don't like this guy.
Yeah, and I didn't really talk too much. I was just like, I just want to play the game and talk on the court. So that was a very interesting game. I think halfway through the game, I wasn't really doing well. And I think we had, at one point, we clashed and he kneed my thigh and I couldn't really walk straight anymore. So his friends came over, rubbed my leg. They were like, no, you can't. You got to get back in the game. I was like, all right, I will. And then I think the second half of the game was just completely different. My shots started falling. There was like nobody in his team that could guard me anymore. But despite all of that, it came down to, I think, the final seconds.
Yeah.
It was like tied score or something. Their class had the possession of the ball. My teammate was guarding him, and he somehow, I think he got distracted, and my teammate stole the ball from him, cleared it out, just threw the ball at me, and I could see from my peripheral that he's coming to guard me because he knows the ball's coming to me. Yeah. And as soon as I get the ball, I just turn around. I can't even see the rim because his hand is in my face, and I just shoot the ball. And from that point on, I have zero recollection of what happened because everything was so overwhelming. The only thing I remember was just people just cheering so loud.
It was that moment.
Yeah, it was at that moment. That was like probably the highlight of it.
Adam became someone on the map at that time.
Yeah.
Wow. So in the end, your team won.
Yeah.
Wow, you just described a basketball match that I wish I got to witness. It's such a close game.
Yeah. It was a close game.
It was
fun.
Yeah, so I
Wow.
think that would probably help you understand just how, I guess, obsessed we were with, basketball and what it meant to us. And I think even today, the confidence that we gain from pushing ourselves in basketball, it just helps us, use the same mentality in, everything else that we try to do. If it's, whether it's like a creative thing that we're doing, whether it's career-wise, we need to push ourselves to get somewhere, to learn something that we don't know.
Yeah.
It's good to lose yourself in doing something that
Whoa, that's a great reference right there. You do know you just made a OG reference, right?
Yeah.
You listen to Eminem? Do you?
I do, but not religiously.
Yo, lose yourself.
Then
Oh
maybe
my
it's
god.
there.
Anyways,
Yeah.
we'll tell you later. Well, actually, and then you know what? Extending to the point that we are just talking about, the work ethic that we developed of learning that whatever you practice, you will get better at it. But you got to put in the hours.
Yeah.
That's what we did, and we learned that we are getting better. So then we used exactly the same technique. When I got into uni, I was bored out of my mind because I didn't want to really talk to many people, and so I spent a lot of time by myself. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna learn guitar. It's cool, you know.
Every uni has a guitar guy.
Every uni has a guitar. I was that guy, you know. And so
Did you have your fedora?
no, not that. I didn't go that far.
He was known as the
Beanie. I was a beanie though.
he was that Zayn Malik looking guy playing guitar.
People that are listening, they definitely don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, I am sure they know. There's got to put a Zayn Malik picture right next to their screens. They'll know what I'm talking about.
Anyway, so the same technique I applied to playing guitar, learning on YouTube, like online tutorials and whatnot, and I got better at that. So it was like refining how to learn. I think that for us was quite key in just developing our personalities and understanding that growth is always better for you. Obviously, sometimes I think you can take the growth mindset a little too far, doing growth for the sake of growth. But I mean,
but also like I think one thing, especially I guess in this generation, what a lot of people, at least in my observation, don't really see is like, yeah, sure, we worked really hard, right? And final product, yeah, sure, he's great at singing, great at playing guitar. I'm great at whatever I do. But like in between, there are a lot of like ugly days in between, the injuries that we had to go through, the injuries that he had to go through. And like even I guess when it comes to your guitar and your singing stuff, I remember at that time we were still living with our parents and we shared the same bedroom and I'd have to suffer.
Oh dear.
I would have to suffer. Okay,
And there was
so
no
I am-
noise
I-
cancellation
no noise
back then.
I am the victim here, so please bear with me. I had to listen to him
empathize with them.
do his vocal training, which is like very strange sounds and like different levels of octaves.
You had
and
even
everything.
more
Yeah.
motivation to help him get better. Otherwise,
exactly.
we'll just
It was like-
suffer.
It was like listening to this for hours.
Oh,
wow, that was
See, that's how motivated I was. I
yeah,
did
no,
not
it's
care
like-
what anyone thought.
yeah.
I knew these guys were making fun of me. I knew my parents were sitting outside. They're like, he's doing it again. You know? But I could see the improvement. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to back off. I'm going to continue doing this until
Yeah.
I feel confident that I've improved my voice to a certain degree. You know?
And do you ever think like this motivation of like being the best at whatever you choose to do could potentially be caused by maybe like growing up, there could be people who didn't believe in you,
Yeah.
who had doubts
Yeah.
about you for like a range of reasons. It could be like who you are.
Yeah.
I think there's two parts to that answer. One is 100% yes. Like there's always that chip on the shoulder that, you know, I've mentioned, you know, that kind of forces us to be like, oh, you know, if either we're the best at something or we don't pursue that thing at all. Right. So for me personally, like I will take the time to choose what I want to spend my energy on. But when I do choose that, I want to really go like deep in it, and I want to make sure that I can be the best to my own, I guess, perspective that I can be. So with basketball, that was the same thing. I didn't really do it as a hobby and then took it seriously. Same with the videography thing. I didn't pick it up as a hobby and then I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll take it seriously. Like from the beginning, I was already like, okay, I'm going to commit to this, but I'm going to put the time in and, you know, push myself to see how far I can go. So I think there's definitely that. But on the other hand, it can be kind of detrimental in the sense that, you know, you're only going to accept the best version of what you're doing,
Yeah.
or you're not going to accept that at all, right?
Perfectionism.
I think that's probably something that we both sometimes struggle with. And that's where we kind of need that validation from people who are close to us that, look, you know, you are doing good. Don't hide your work just because you think it's not perfect. You know, in a sense, I need to remind myself that people like to see the story of somebody kind of, you know, coming up to what they are.
Yeah.
But if you don't show that process in between, nobody will really give you the credit that you deserve.
That's true.
It's hard to be vulnerable though.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I think because the world out there feels kind of like it's like a wild jungle, you know, they're out to get you kind of thing. So you do have to develop like ways to stay strong, you know, have like mentally be resilient, and have confidence in the fact that, yeah, you are on a path, even though you have dips in, you know, I guess maybe validation or dips in getting the exposure that you want. I think speaking on the competitive aspect that you mentioned, like, is definitely something that we grew up with. And I do want to say, I think for men, I don't know, I could say for men, being respected is quite important. And so for us growing up, obviously, when you're a kid, you want to be respected so people don't really mess with you, or people don't really they leave you alone, kind of thing. So for us, like, basketball was our kind of way to, if we can get better at basketball, then people would just not mess with us, right? They were like, oh yeah, these guys, they're doing something good with their life, because we went to a school that wasn't necessarily the best school. It was a band 3 school.
Yeah, there was a lot of bullies.
There's bullies, fights, drugs, a lot of stuff.
In a way, it was like a protective mechanism that you need to be respected for something.
Yeah.
Wow.
So people don't mess with you.
Yeah. So because we spend most of our time, like 99% of our time in basketball, like, generally there was no problems at all. There was fights, a lot of them, but never involved us.
Yeah.
So, and I think obviously our parents want the best for us, so they would push us constantly. Our dad, he's also someone that's quite a perfectionist, I guess. And because he wants the best for us as well, obviously he has his own ways to, motivate us and whatnot. Let's not get too much details, but I mean, he was quite strict with us, right? He would always want us to do better.
I think
always.
that's probably something a lot of, I guess, ethnic minority families
Yeah.
would probably expect from their families, right?
Yeah.
And we wouldn't understand it when we were young.
Yeah, we wouldn't.
No.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I guess a lot of like immigrants, let's say in North America and Europe, they could also relate to that, because sometimes like they might be the only family that represents their culture,
Yeah.
where they are
Exactly,
from, and
Yeah.
especially for the older generations, like the grandparents, the parents, when they had to navigate a new city, there was a lot of like assimilation they had to do as well. So
Yeah.
definitely, like the more I hear about these stories, I can see why our parents were the way that they were.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, you both sort of like went for kind of like a creative career choice, and basically for photography and videography, you both pursue them professionally, which is kind of rare in the Pakistani community, right? Like, how did you arrive at that like
Do you wanna go first?
choice?
Shall I go first?
I'm pretty sure, like, growing up, maybe your parents would be telling you something completely different in terms of what you should be
100%.
doing for work.
100%.
So my origin story was
Origin story. Let the world know.
Yeah.
From zero to hero.
Yes. So our dad, growing up, he always had cameras with him. Like, he was very enthusiastic about cameras. Like,
Wow.
he would document everything. Like, I know a lot of parents growing up, like, they document their kids, right? So they would take pictures and stuff. But our dad, he was very, very enthusiastic
Very
and
dedicated.
dedicated, very passionate. He would document every single event, any small event. Going to the mosque, he was like, yeah, kids, hold the camera. I'm going to be speaking to some people here, and I'm going to be shaking hands, and you need to document every single thing.
And it was like
Wow.
perfectionist to the point, like, we will get a post-event briefing.
Yeah, you're like,
a debrief.
you didn't compose
You
this
didn't
guy
do
well.
this.
You should have told me to be in the center of the frame.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And like, even, I mean, just that was like when he would ask us to do it, right? But when we were kids, like, he would document everything at home as well. There's like a lot of embarrassing videos. There's also videos of us literally just like getting into full fights with each other.
Yeah.
And he would literally egg us on just so he could document the whole thing. He was like, go fight him. Go.
He would encourage method acting, like,
Yeah.
fight for real.
Wow, I want to see those photos.
Oh my God.
There's videos, not just photos.
We have drives full of videos.
Oh
Full
dear.
of videos.
Wow.
So growing up, like, we had this exposure to cameras and stuff. But as we grew older in our formative years of teenagehood, the rebelliousness and everything made me not want to touch cameras.
Both of us.
Yeah. I didn't want to do it because I associated it with negative feelings.
Because you were the unpaid intern.
Basically,
The
exactly.
longest
I was
time.
way too overworked.
It wasn't even paid in exposure.
Yes.
It's true. It's true what they
He would
say
post it
about
on his
creative
Facebook.
jobs.
He would post it on his Facebook for his friends, and like, he wouldn't even credit his kids. Like,
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, just I had this like event, and I did this.
You
and
were
that.
paid with exposure.
Exposure to I don't know,
Yeah, just more like scolding on how to be perfect.
Yeah. And so for the longest time, I never really want to do that. I didn't want to really learn how to use a camera. Like ever he asked me to film something, I'm like, I don't really know these settings. I don't really know what it is. Even though at the back of my mind, I've observed enough to know what it is. Like I know what it is, but I didn't want to really admit it.
And then you pass it on to me.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, I don't know. He was watching some YouTube videos the other day. I think he should get the camera. I used to do that.
And I didn't have a younger brother to pass it on to, so I was like, oh no, I'm stuck.
Darn.
So in uni, I had a friend who started to take photos. He bought a camera, Fujifilm camera, XT20, I think it was. And he started taking photos, and that was the era on Instagram where, people like, there was like a creative kind of era. I don't know what it was called. Like people just started taking professional camera photos and stuff, and then edits and everything.
I think you're talking about when the first like DSLRs started hitting the market. It was more affordable to get that 5D Mark II stuff.
So he was taking a lot of photos, and people in my group and like friends, they would be like, "Oh, yeah, he takes really good photos, man. Like, have you seen?" And like I would hear that a lot, And so for the longest time, I didn't really pay too much attention to that. I did have opinions about it. I did feel sometimes like, I think his edits, I'm not too sure about. I don't really see what you see, And one day, like, I just had enough, I was just like, in my mind, I've been like marinating this whole like thing about like, his photos are not that good. I don't get why people are like this and that. Maybe I should just like actually try and see if I can do better.
It's like show them how it's done.
It's that Michael Jordan part was like, and I took that personally.
It's true, because then I was like, I asked my dad, hey, can I use your camera? I really didn't want to go there. But then
you gave him the satisfaction.
Yeah. But I was like, I have to do this for myself, So I used this camera, I started taking photos, and I started figuring out how to edit and stuff. And I really started to get the hang of it. Like I was like, okay, this is really fun. Like you can fiddle around with so many settings, and you can make the photo look in so many different ways. And I started following some viral trends as well on Instagram and try to recreate creative kind of like concepts of shoots and stuff with my friends or people I know in uni. I just go up to them, hey, I want to take photos of you. Do you want to do a photo shoot with me? And it would be completely random ideas. And that built into 1 or 2 years later getting a paid job for the first time for this online shop that sold. There was an era where Supreme, Stussy, and all this kind of stuff was coming up, and people really wanted that like high beast type of like clothing, and so a lot of online shops opened up at that time. This shop wanted to hire me. They saw my work on Instagram and they wanted to hire me, and that was the first kind of lookbook shoot that I did, and I was like, oh, I'm getting paid quite a good, well, more than nothing,
After years of being unpaid.
Well, actually not that many years, to be honest, but I felt like, there was also that pride element since the beginning, and the competitive thing. And I was glad that when I got paid for the first gig, I was like, okay, so I can get paid for this kind of work. And I think I have proven to myself to a certain degree that I can take photos, but it comes from a competitive drive that we've had since high school.
You had that whole package of a popular guy. You did singing, you did guitar, and then you're also the camera guy.
That's
what can he not do?
That's accurate.
It's like, stop overachieving.
I mean, I am the eldest son.
What is this guy? Can this guy? Is there something he can't do?
I mean, that's just how I was conditioned, man. It's not my
Oh my
fault.
god, he's the model eldest son here. It's like I'm an eldest child, but then I just like gave up the whole eldest child game. I'm like, don't look at me.
It's okay. We all go through our own paths.
But what about you? Like, how did you get into videography?
So initially, the part with our dad, thrusting the cameras at us and asking us, forcing us to document stuff, I hated that too. There was zero part of that I enjoyed.
You sure? Because like you were really passionately filming every
I
time.
don't think so. There's just that one photo that I'm holding a camera and I look happy, but I don't think I was.
And you're the middle child, so you had to be like doing something.
I just have to just pick up after everyone else and maintain the peace. So for me, it came in quite a a much later stage than Zaref. He was doing photography for a long time. I didn't really have any interest in photos or videos, or I wouldn't even pull out my phone to take photos or videos from my phone either. I had zero interest in documenting things. And then it was really like, for me, it was after my first job out of university. So this is 2018, 2019 that I'm speaking about. And my pretty much day was pretty much going to the office, going to gym, and coming back home. Those were the three places that I pretty much lived. Because the year before that, I had a shoulder injury and I just couldn't play basketball anymore for a long time.
Hey, you got pretty jacked though at that time.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was a personal sort of battle that I was like, I need to prove these physiotherapists wrong, that their treatment is not the best solution to my problems. And I sort of took it on myself that I was like, you know what, I'm going to figure out a solution to my own shoulder issues, because I couldn't even raise my arm to change my own t-shirt. It was terrible, that pain. And I lost a lot of weight because of that. And obviously not being able to play basketball for like a year put me in a pretty bad place mentally. So coming out of that, I kind of made this promise to myself that I will get to this place where I'm happy, with myself physically. So that year 2019 to 2020 was like, I was pretty obsessed with just going to the gym and pushing myself to fix my shoulder. And then that translated into, okay, now, I feel good about my progress. How far do I want to achieve, push myself? So then I did reach a point where I was pretty happy with how I looked. And I was like, oh, I can actually achieve this if I push myself. I didn't lose it because of my shoulder injury. So once I had that sort of satisfaction for myself, and it wasn't just sort of something internally, right? Like people started treating me different, based on how I looked. I didn't really hide myself because I was smaller, before. And it's very like, some people might call it, think of it as very sort of a basic thing that, it's obviously you're going to work out, you're going to look good, people are going to treat you with respect. But for a lot of people, it is that body dysmorphia / body image thing. But for most people, I feel like it's the opposite, where, they are trying to lose weight and get to that shape that they want. For me, it was the opposite, where I found it difficult to gain weight and get to that image that I liked. So I had to push myself and force myself to eat more to get to that point. And I reached a point where I was quite happy with myself. And then for me, the next step was, okay, I've been doing all of these things, but I don't have a creative outlet. I don't know what there was a part of me that was like, I need to put my mind onto something. Physically, I'm pushing myself, but mentally, there's not much that I'm really pushing myself to do. So and then I think around that time was when it was right before COVID.
Right.
And I remember and I was watching a lot of, movies at that time, and I would go to cinemas and just watch movies by myself. I didn't really care to like invite people and just, wait for other people to come with me and watch movies. And then I think there was this one point where I was thinking to myself, like, you know what, like making videos, is it really something that is affordable for me to do? Like everything is so high end, it looks so cool. Is it something that I could really do? And it was something I would just think internally. And then one day somebody asked me, they were like, hey, if money wasn't really a problem, what camera equipment would you get? Immediately I knew the answer to it. I was like, I'm going to get this.
Who asked this question?
I don't remember who it was. Dude. I don't know if it was a friend or who it was.
It was just a random throwaway question.
Yeah, I was like, I'm going to get this A7S III. I'm going to get this lens, and I'm going to, that's what I would have. So then I had, from that point on, for like the next 2 months, I just couldn't stop thinking about that. And I had this thing with myself where I was like, if I can't stop thinking about something for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I have to do something about it. And it was 3 months. And I was like, you know what? It's been far too long. I'm going to invest in this, and I'm going to, figure out how I want to use this as an outlet. So then the question came, what should I do with this, equipment and all that that I got? So it didn't take me too long to figure out what direction I wanted to go to, because for me, naturally, the topic that I would go to was sports and the obsession that comes with it, right? So, we have done sports growing up pretty much our whole life, just doing different sports and then ending up in basketball. And then we had this certain obsession. But that obsession wasn't only sort of one-sided, where it was for our own self-confidence. I think through basketball, we also made a lot of friends. Like, it was the way you could connect with so many people. Like, if you played with locals and, you could sort of prove yourself on the court, immediately they would be friends with you. Like, they would remember you. They would ask you to be in their team.
Next day, you're like, yeah, you're the guy they want.
Yeah, exactly. So there were so many things that came with, just pushing yourself, doing a sport, and having that obsession. So I always had, naturally I came to that theme of wanting to explore people who are obsessed with the sport that they do, right? What does that give you? Are you using sports as a vehicle to get confidence? Are you using it as a vehicle to address, I don't know, be a part of a different culture? Like, for example, for us, if I were to move somewhere completely new, all I have to do is go to a basketball court.
True.
Right? Immediately I can start
That's
making
very
friends.
smart.
So I think for me, that topic was always something that I really wanted to explore. And I didn't really think about how far I wanted to go to, but I think the more I do it, the more I realize that the area that I like is being able to tell honest stories. Obviously in movies, it's a slightly different version of it, but documentaries is where you can really let the truth come out. So my goal then kind of became I want to achieve to that point where I can start making documentaries to explore, people who have these obsessions with sports. And I mean, it was only a few months ago where I finally, finished my first short documentary.
Wow.
It's not perfect. Obviously, being a perfectionist, I'm not happy with how it looks, but everyone else will say that, it's a good.
It's never good enough.
Yeah. But obviously it's, you got to get the first step out of the way and to push forward. So that's kind of my story with this creative outlet.
Wow. It's just so interesting to hear about how what really connected you to the cameras was your dad, but then you both went off a whole detour and then coming back to it, and then you kind of manifested a little bit differently. You are specializing in videography and you photography, and I can imagine maybe the subjects or your specialty would be portraits and people, right?
Yes. I think so. I started off taking pictures of people. And I think eventually, what I realized is what I like about portrait photography is what leads up to taking those photos. It's the communication with those people and learning about their story and their background, and then building rapport, and then collaborating on the vision together to create something. Because once I involve people in the process, it's not just the process of myself, it's usually a collaboration, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So once I involve those people and I show them what I'm thinking, and I ask them what they were thinking or are thinking, and the blending of the minds together to create something, I think that's what I really, really enjoy.
For sure.
So when I experimented with doing fashion photography, and I also assisted fashion photographers based in Hong Kong, and when I learned behind the scenes of bigger team collaborations and what goes hairstylists, makeup artists, and stylists, and there's a agenda, there's a magazine that needs pictures, and there's models and everything, there's timing, there's a whole constraints and everything, and learning all of that, I realized there's a lot more to just taking photos.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's a human element to it, there's a communication aspect to it, there's knowing very well how to do the technical things and getting that out of the way, because that's not even the main gist of taking good photos or videos for that matter. Now I'm in a place where I'm focusing on the business side of things. Growing up, we didn't really have that many references of people that are doing well in business in our family. And so I think that's something that I kind of always avoided. I didn't really want to think about the business side because I just want to focus on the creative, I just want to be good at creating, right? And so now that I'm focusing more on the business side, I think it's great because I'm getting to take a break sometimes from the creative side of things. And when I come back to it, I do get a fresher mind.
Yeah.
It's interesting because we're kind of the opposite in that sense, where I'm usually a little bit more business minded, where I'm thinking about, okay, how can I, get these sales leads, or how can I, work with these certain
that makes a really
brands?
good team
Yeah.
though, because
So
you're
my
taking
creative
care of,
came in later. For him, the creative came first. So that was the interesting blend as well.
Yeah. Which is why we started our own production collaboration. It's called Picture 8 Productions for people out there. And we had our first client last summer.
Last summer.
Yay.
Yes, it was quite a big client.
It was a pretty big. It was the first time we had sort of worked on a paid client work like that. We had to form our team. We had a project proposal. We went in there to pitch our project. We had a whole deck, and they loved it. They're like, "Yeah, we want you." And I think we're gonna do another project with them hopefully
Nice.
in February. Fingers
So
crossed.
you guys like do more of the commercial shoots side of things, right?
Commercial, editorial. I think we're open to different genres.
So people just reach out to you
Yeah.
if they
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
any.
So for me, interestingly, you talked about your first paid work, right?
Yes.
So interestingly for me, my paid work didn't come from Hong Kong. It was my first sort of, I guess the second video I made. First, it was like my first test project that I did was trying to emulate a commercial that I saw, online. It was I think an Adidas or a Converse commercial. And for me, I was like, for me to sort of learn an art, I want to try and imitate first and then, be original at it. So I wanted to try and imitate that and see how to do that. So based on that, there was an American company or the media agency that reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we really like this work that you did. Can you do this almost the same exact thing? Just put our product in it," which was
It's all on YouTube, right? Your work?
It was like a water bottle, a sports water bottle brand. So then I was like, "Oh, what? I can actually get a job? Is this even real?" I researched this guy so much on the internet. Couldn't find anything about him. I'm like, is this person
Yeah,
even
I
real?
remember. Yeah, like we had like deep discussions about whether this is a scam or
How
not.
legit that is. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a lot of back and forth. I even tried to get him on a video call to like prove that he was real, but he just did not want to do that. But then I was like, all right, so for you to prove that you're real, you're gonna have to send the product in first before I agree to anything. Which he ended up doing. He had sent me the bottle and I'm like, oh, okay, so this is real.
Oh wow.
So I'm gonna have to do this.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
And then that whole thing happened, and I got paid for it. He liked the work, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. I can get work from other people as well that are not in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like the first sort of time that I felt that okay, my hard work is gonna get somewhere. I just don't know where it's gonna go yet. So I think we have our individual clients as well that we work on separately, but then whenever there's a production that requires both photos and videos, that's when we come in. Or if there's, for example, if he's working with a client who needs videos as well, then he will bring me in. If I'm working with a client that needs photos, then I'll bring him in.
Yeah.
That's
So
really
it's,
cool.
yeah, that's kind of how it
Like you
works.
can always
now.
upsell your services.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's nice. Wow. It's like all the training from
Yeah.
your dad
From
is
our
finally
dad.
getting somewhere.
He's probably gonna watch this and he's gonna smile at himself. He's like,
It's like, I told you, son. It's
I knew what I was saying.
like all that unpaid work.
yeah.
Well,
Shout out to dad. Shout out to dad.
shout out to that. I mean, most of the time parents are
Yeah.
getting us into
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
They have
Yeah.
influences that definitely help us. There are influences that we definitely need to work. Kind of learn and how to navigate those. But at the end
But
of
what
the
I'm
day,
curious about is what your parents pushed you in early childhood, or if they did, and what was your
Yeah.
experience like?
I mean, especially I'm closer with my mom, so like my mom would always like I I remember as a kid, like I would ask her like, "Oh, what do you want me to be like when I grow up?" Which is an odd question to ask, but she was like, "Oh, be an accountant." Which I'm definitely not an accounting. I tried that in uni and I didn't like it. And now accountants could be replaced by AI in the near future. So maybe I had that foresight.
Great decision making.
you know what's interesting is just on the parents and the job thing. I think for our community, for our parents, they only know, I think, 3 jobs. One is you're either a doctor, you're a lawyer, or you're an engineer.
Yeah.
Oh.
Outside of those 3 things, whatever job you're doing, they will not understand. Yeah. So my I guess the longest job that I did after university, it was at a private sort of research company, and my role was client relationship management.
The amount of times you explained that to dad and mom.
I had to explain this so many times to them. They just did not understand what I did.
Yeah.
Like, so anytime you talk to people.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, so what do you really do?
You have some clients, right?
They're like, how do you actually earn money from just talking to people?
Oh my God, yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna have to say again. So
that reminds me, like my mom would sometimes tell me like how one of her friends' son would be like doing a certain thing, and then she'd be, oh yeah, he's great. But then after hearing about that, I was like, it's like, Mom, I'm doing the same thing.
Oh my goodness.
And then she's like, oh really? Like, but then like at one point I was in corporate communications, and then my mom would be, oh yeah, but he's in like corporate communications. Like, Mom, I am in corporate communications.
She was like, why don't you explain to me the same way you did?
I know, but I don't know. It's like, I don't know if our listeners or like you guys can relate. Like whenever we talk to our Asian parents, they would always tell you like someone's kid is doing really well.
100%.
And then when you tell them like, oh, this is what I'm doing, they're like, nah, is that legit?
Are you sure you're doing the same thing? You seem like he's doing a lot more.
There were times Mom would just call me. She was like, hey, so I'm talking to this friend of mine and I want to explain to her what you do. Can you give me in the simplest terms? What is it that you do?
Yeah.
I'm
It's
like,
just like the marketing folks out there, they have the hardest time explaining what they do.
100%.
Especially, oh, you make money from posting?
That's definitely, I think, like the new age of content and everything. I think that's a hard concept to grasp.
Yeah, the whole influencers.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I don't know how it was. I don't remember how it was for you, but for me, when it started the video thing, I didn't really face too many questions from parents who are like, oh, you know, can you actually earn money from it? It was more like it was just a matter. They felt. I think the impression I got was that, oh, it's only a matter of time before I start earning from it. So I didn't really feel, at least from their perspective, that it was something that they questioned. It was more like, why are you spending so much money on this? Is it just a hobby or are you going to take it seriously? But for me, already the answer was clear. I was like, no, I'm going to take it seriously. I'm not just doing that as a hobby. So I don't know how it was for you.
I actually don't remember how whether they were even involved in my photography or like, because I remember I was editing all the time. I always had a new shoot that I did every week, I think, almost every 2 weeks or every week. And I had something to edit and I was in my room. It's either I was playing the guitar or I was editing photos, you know? And
when it was my turn to use the computer, you'd be playing guitar.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I spent my time.
You have to be extra focused with the videos and stuff.
Yeah, you would wear headphones and there's like, and I have so many videos of me recording covers and you could hear
because I'm playing video games.
Video games.
Like sound effects.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a paid actor.
So, I mean, they didn't really, I mean, I think my mom was concerned because my first job after uni, I only stayed in it for 3 months and I had to switch. I quit that job because it was a very toxic manager that I had. And I had to just say, hey, I don't think I can work here anymore, you know? And when I was looking for another job, at that time, I was like, yeah, I have more time now. I can take more photos. And I think that's when my mom got concerned because she's like, he's taking a lot of photos. Is he applying for jobs, you know? And so I was applying for jobs, but then I was also hoping that I could make the photography thing a full-time thing. In hindsight, I didn't have a good understanding of business at that time at all to be able to make this full-time thing, you know? So I mean, I managed to find a job at the logistics company, and they didn't really ask me questions about whether I earned money from photos or not. If I did, and they would find out about it, then, oh yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
And it was also, I think that was also the phase where I was working as a coder daytime, and then in the evening or in the weekends I would be taking photos. And for the longest time I always felt like a clash in my mind in terms of like the different sides of your brain kind of thing. There's like such a heavy logic based thinking in the daytime. Monday to Friday you're trying to fix bugs, you're trying to like figure out the logic, you're trying to figure out which data goes from which point to which point, how do you massage that to get what you want. JavaScript and Java. And then I had another project at work where my manager was like, hey, I think you're more like a visual guy, you study 3D game development, maybe you could prototype a 3D kind of thing and we could show it to the managers. And then I was like hyper focused on that. And then I think that's where it kind of leads me to my design career, because once I got out of like this very deep logic based programming and I did visual coding, I realized I can blend my visual creative skills that I got from photography and apply it to tech.
Yeah.
So then I quit that job as well after 2 years.
Wow.
Right when you learned how to figure something out.
Yeah, I was like, no,
let's move.
I'm done. I need to move on now. And so I didn't have a job lined up yet. Like I was still interviewing at places, but I was confident that this place that I was interviewing at, they believed in me. And they believed that I could be a UX UI designer. And I had at that point only like learned a little bit about it. And shout out to my boss at that time for believing in me, because that was a very important opportunity for me. I got into that job and I did what I could, but at a certain point I felt an imposter syndrome because I realized I didn't really exactly know what I was saying or talking about in terms of design. So then that made me make a decision, is whether I continue being an imposter, getting money and making designs that probably don't functionally work well in terms of a user experience, or I learned about this and I don't face anxiety every day at work. So then I started reading books about design, watching YouTube videos, and then practicing those little things that I'm learning from a day to day. Eventually we made a lot of nice features, and the company, albeit it didn't really go too far, I had to be laid off with other people because we ran out of investor money. I then applied to my current job at Lala Move, and it's a great place to work. The team is actually, what's funny is local people are the minority in our company.
Oh, wow.
I was just talking to my colleagues earlier today, and they were like, yeah, you need to tell them that we are minority. My boss was saying, because there's a lot of international people at that company. And
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
And because Lala Move is not just Hong Kong based. So I really enjoy working there. I think that place also helped me grow a lot in terms of like my ability to do problem solving, because when you work on projects where you're trying to go from end to end, designing user experience and also think of like all the technical stuff, you get to think very critically. And so that job is great.
But one thing though, you did take a break from photography in between, right?
Yes.
Was that because of the full-time job stuff? Was there other reasons you took a pause from it?
Actually, I think I took a pause from photography based off of this one shoot that I did. I think it kind of left a mark on me because I had planned this whole shoot. It was like a collaborative shoot between like all the stylists, hairstylists, makeup artists. It was quite like the concept was quite like creative, like the hair was like green and then the outfit was like colorful, and we're supposed to shoot at the peak, and it was winter time, and I think it was like 3 degrees at that time, and it started raining, and I had rented all this equipment and we were on top of the mountain with the crew, and the model just could not be in those clothes because she was shivering.
Oh,
and I think
unfortunate.
I panicked so much that day, because I'm like, okay, I need to figure out a solution right now.
Yeah.
I cannot go home and say, hey, okay, guys, we're not going to do this shoot. So, I called my friend who had a studio in Kwai Chung, and I was like, hey, man, like, I've got a situation. Are you still at your studio? Can I get access? I want to rent your studio for a quick, like, few hours. And he's like, no, I've left, but I can go back and I'll leave the key for you and then you can use it. And so the shoot was supposed to be from 12 to 5. We arrived to the studio at 6.
Wow.
And that shoot ended at 11:30.
I totally forgot the story.
Oh dear.
And the photos came out nice, but man, like I think that anxiety that I faced that day, I didn't shoot for a while.
Like a few years, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
2 years, 2-3
That
years.
bad.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize how much that affected me. And I only started shooting again. I started getting some like corporate, I think it was corporate work, some cocktail photography, some photography from restaurants, chef portraits and stuff like that. And it's like easy kind of like easing into it, you know? And yeah.
Wow. That was such a stressful situation because
it was
like
so
I've
stressful.
worked in like productions as well, and then sometimes you only get like one day to get the whole job done.
Yeah.
And when it comes to like outdoors, you don't get to control the weather.
Exactly.
And when situations happen, people always like look to maybe the cameraman or the photographer. Oh, what to do now? You're
exactly.
That was almost
making
the
the call,
situation.
right?
That was
Yeah.
almost a situation at our first that big page shoot that we had last year.
Oh, true.
Where
yes.
it's like as soon as we got there, it started raining.
Yeah.
And we were like, it looked totally fine going there. But as soon as we brought all our gear down, halfway down, it started pouring.
But hey, I think the difference was, right, 2 things, right? One,
Yeah.
from my experience that time, what I learned is over preparation is under preparation.
Yeah, 100%.
Like
Yeah.
we planned, like that's why for that shoot
We did
last
plan
summer,
for
we
it.
planned for weather.
Yeah.
So
did.
we brought umbrellas, we had covers for all the equipment and everything. So we just waited out
Yeah.
until the rain went away, and then we went ahead with the shoot and it was perfect. So I mean, yeah, you learn from your experiences, but the resilience that you need to have is
I guess it's the same with like pretty much any creative endeavor, right? Like it's a road, I guess, less taken, less traveled. So anyone who does embark on that path, you have to just know that there's going to be stuff that will either give you a lot of like panic attacks, a lot of stressful days.
But when you make it, it's amazing.
Like I mean, it's always going to be there, that part of you, right? Like, and the only way to really get through it is to go through the experiences,
Absolutely.
and have them. So I think that's kind of what shapes you, and I think just kind of, I guess, going back into linking that to our community as well. I think, and also something we were talking about earlier was the labels. I think what I notice is that, there are definitely a lot of people who would have potential, doing creative things, but they wouldn't really do that because they're like, oh, I am supposed to be doing this. I'm supposed to find a full-time job that pays stable money because I need to. Because I need to support my family. I need to do this, so I can't risk doing that.
yeah.
And for us to mitigate that risk, we are doing this thing where we have our full-time job to keep us afloat, to keep us stable. And then we have this creative thing that we're still building on the side. And we're just pushing to see how far it goes.
Yeah.
But really, I think it's not really an overnight success type of thing. It's more like you just keep working at it. At some point, you will, make that leap.
Inshallah.
Yeah, that will get you where you want to be. But
it really
I think,
comes down to how badly you want to do this. But
yeah.
I mean, obviously, nothing wrong with, like people who would like to choose kind of like a safer path just because of circumstances, or maybe the time is not right for them to pursue what they want to, right? But definitely it's been so interesting learning about like all your journeys with like your hobbies, your creative careers, and your identities. Like you both sort of like grew up in the same family, but then like you also have your own takes on a lot of things. You took your own detour when it comes to like Cantonese, cameras, and a creative career. But now it's time for us to move on to the next segment, which is called
Absolutely.
Rapid Fires.
And for this segment, I'll be asking my guests biased questions that they've got asked at some points in life. And in your case, it would be some of the comments or questions that people would always come for you. So yeah, with that, are you ready to address all of these difficult questions?
Maybe.
Maybe.
We'll see what happens.
Let's see. First question is, you're not a Hong Konger. Has anyone said that to you?
I don't.
It's more like, what are you?
Like where are you really from?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like where are you
What are
really
you?
from type of thing, you know? I mean, yeah. I've given different answers at
Yeah.
different phases.
Well, a lot of times, I think my go-to answer is, "Can you guess?"
Yeah, that's more fun.
Yeah. I mean,
And what
I
are the
usually-
guesses that you would get?
Oh, I've gotten so many different ones. I've gone like Greek, Argentinian.
Yeah, you're Greek god, so
Italian.
I mean,
Wow.
obviously.
So many different things. Like, but you know what's interesting? Nobody ever says Pakistani.
Huh.
They would say Indian, but they would
Mm.
never ever guess Pakistani. That's something that I've never had
Interesting.
anyone guess.
But I think I've faced that as well, and I realized I think people might not have too much awareness about
Yeah.
Pakistan in Hong Kong.
Or the difference between Indians and Pakistanis.
True.
Like, it's kind of like, oh, somebody from Hong Kong or China.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's something along those lines of differences.
I
right?
was
Like,
just
so-
having
Yeah.
like a conversation with Japanese taxi driver when I was in Japan the other
Oh,
day,
okay.
and I was telling him about how like, oh, you know, like sometimes when like Hong Kongers, like when they go to Japan to travel, if people like speak Mandarin to them, they get a little bit offended, and it is because in Hong Kong they speak Cantonese,
Yeah.
not Mandarin.
Yeah.
And the feeling would sort of be similar to like if someone speaks Korean to a Japanese
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
And when I explained that, like the Japanese taxi driver was like, "Oh, I did not know. Like they didn't even know in
Yeah.
Hong Kong like people speak Cantonese."
You know what's interesting about that? There are times where somebody is having a conversation with me and they would just assume that I'm from, I don't know, maybe India or something like that, and they would say something related to that to me, assuming that I would know. My go-to answer to that is like, "Hey man, I wouldn't know. I'm not Indian." You know, and
Yeah.
I just take it, you know, just like that. I'm not offended by it because I know, okay, they're probably not coming. They're not consciously thinking
They
about
probably
it. Or they
thought
probably
like
don't know.
Pakistanis and Indians
Yeah,
are like
yeah.
the same thing.
Yeah, so my go-to
Yeah.
answer is always like, I wouldn't know, man. I couldn't tell you even if you paid me to. Yeah.
But hey, what I have heard actually, another rapid fire bias.
I think you should let her do the rapid bias.
No, but I do want to add in this one.
So for the first time, the guest is doing it time, so I'm like,
Flipping the tables.
I'm gonna take over.
Yeah, we'll just run this.
So what I've heard a lot is, oh, you're from Pakistan, but you're not that dark.
Ooh.
That's true.
You
That's
know?
true, yeah.
Ooh,
Like
oh
I've
my
heard that
God.
so many times, and I'm like, I don't really know how to answer this question. It's like whatever you say, it's kind of almost makes you dumb.
Yeah.
Like you trying to be defensive at this point or what, you know?
Yeah.
So I mean, I think I just brushed that question off. I think.
Yeah. We can't really
There's a
take
whole
offense to it,
spectrum
yeah.
of like skin tones.
Yeah.
and- yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. It's like for some reason in Asia or maybe in Hong Kong, they really just make like blatant comments about like skin tones and skin
tone.
colors as
It's
well.
quite an Asian thing.
Is it?
Yeah,
Is it?
because I think also in Pakistan and India, the common commercials that you would get, like the skincare,
the skin whitening.
the skin
yeah,
whitening
yeah. Oh my
stuff
God.
is
It
very
is
prevalent.
heavy.
Oh gosh.
And it's actually, I would say it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Even in Africa, you know,
True.
like people over there, I think I heard they even bleach their skin, you know.
Wow.
So there is like a thing.
Yeah.
I think there was a commercial in China or something where this guy, a dark skinned guy, goes in a washing machine.
Oh, yeah, that one,
The
yeah.
cleaning, that like detergent,
Detergent.
commercial, and then
Oh
he
my
became
goodness.
white.
Yeah, how do they even come up with such out of pocket
Yeah.
ideas,
Oh
man?
my
My
God.
goodness.
All these like racist commercials coming out.
Crazy, and it works
Asia,
because
yeah.
it's so like whoa, you know,
I
the
know.
shock
How is it
factor.
even possible that they got a green light to do this?
Yeah.
Oh my God! It's like like they went through a lot of barriers and then still got the green light to do
Yeah.
that.
And
Wow.
the fact that was probably a lot of years ago, and we're still talking
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
it. So the creative people there, they knew what they were doing.
I do think it's a little sad though, because for a lot of countries and cultures, you know, not just Hong Kong, not just like India or Pakistan, like they like worshipping the type of facial features and skin tones that like they don't naturally have. Like
Yeah.
I feel like they're just setting themselves up for like disappointment or like even maybe like self-esteem issues or even like like I think for East Asian communities in North America and maybe more so in North America or maybe in Europe, like they like their tan skin as well.
You know, it's interesting you say that because growing up, I had a more darker tan skin tone.
Especially because we played basketball in the sun.
Always
every
in
day,
the sun.
You know?
And growing up, I was never really comfortable with that. Part of it came from family because obviously they're influenced by what they see on the TV, which is, you know, brighter skin is better, all that stuff. And I think just so generally my perception of dark skin wasn't very healthy. But then the more I grew up, the more people around me were like, oh, I really like your tan skin.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, what?
I mean, that's kind of fetishizing the
no, it's just like, it would just be like, oh, you got,
yeah,
like, oh, you got a pretty good tan.
God, man, of course.
So like from there, I was like, oh, what? People like my skin tone? I didn't know that was possible.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And the next bias, not really a bias, not really a question. Achar. Like this is a question for you. Like, do you actually like find that offensive?
Yeah. So
I don't think so.
going back to that story as well, right? Like in the childhood, we didn't really know what it meant either. Once we did, at least for me, once I did know, I was like, oh, okay. I guess so whenever somebody says it, I shouldn't just laugh at it. I should just be neutral because I think for me, it's like if you don't respond to something, people won't really continue doing it, right? It's like the way you would treat a kid.
Yeah.
If you listen to their crying, then they will continue to cry because they know that, oh, if I'm crying, I will get this thing that I want. So the same thing with like, I think, you know, having these I guess biases or like these certain racial slurs, if you don't respond to it, it's not always, I can't say it's the same thing that can apply everywhere, but sometimes if you just don't respond to it, then the other person would feel dumb to even like be like, oh, why did I even say it? I didn't get any response.
It's like online haters. If you don't respond to them, like they don't get any reactions from you. They just find that like, oh, like it's not working with this person.
Yeah. So that's how I approach it. I don't know if you probably have a different approach to this.
Well, fun fact. You know how policemen in Cantonese is called chayan, right? So that actually comes from like how they were Sikh and Indian police officers back in the day.
Oh.
And the acha thing combined with that is why we call police officers chayan.
Oh, so because like police officers in Hong Kong used to be more like
Indian or Sikh.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Oh.
So I mean, I think when I heard about like when I looked into this, I realized I don't really take it as derogatory. I think it more depends on how the person says and their intention. You know. So.
Yeah, I think this bias inherently it's not a negative sort of term. Just depends on the context it's used in.
But would you suggest people to like when you first meet a Pakistani person, like it's not like, hey, you're a chap, but like right, like maybe like address the person by name.
Yeah, no, 100%. You gotta get people by their names.
That's a good bet.
Yeah, and the next one, I don't know if you get this one. So I go back to India. Referencing people tend to think all South Asians are from India, at least in Hong Kong.
Nah, I haven't really heard
Like
that.
not go back
either.
to your country type of thing.
I think sorry.
I might have heard it. Other people, may have heard this, towards them, but personally, I don't think I've had anyone.
On
say
the contrary, I've mostly heard questions and curiosity about like, oh, 你有冇返過鄉下？你有冇返過巴基斯坦？ Like, have you been there? But they never tell me to go back.
Yeah, that's true. I've had that too. A lot of people ask, oh, when did you go back there?
Yeah.
Funny enough, like we haven't gone back since we were like, I don't know, 3
But
years
you've
old.
been, right?
Yeah, not 3.
When I was 3, you were 5. Oh no, I was
What are you talking
5 because our younger brother was just born.
Yeah.
Oh,
Dude,
so
that
that was
was
the
right.
one.
That was the last time.
Wow.
we went there.
Wow. And the next one, do you eat curry every day?
Hey,
Very interesting.
I love curry. So I don't care what you say. If you say I eat curry, I'm gonna say yeah, I eat curry every day. So
Yeah,
you
the
wanna
I
question
try
just
Surprise
had
me.
curry for
Do you
dinner
want to
last
try
Yeah,
some?
I was gonna
Come to
say.
my home.
I was gonna
I'll
say
make
my
you
next
some.
question, like, well, have you ever tried a good one?
Yeah.
But it's interesting you say that because I was talking to one of my friends. So I've pretty much the companies that I've worked at, I've been very international. So there isn't really, that kind of segregation of locals and facing those kind of things. But one of my close friends, we studied together and we graduated together, and he worked at a local company, and he told me, he's like, yeah, there was one time I just took my lunch out, and it wasn't even curry, it was spaghetti. And one of his colleague was just like, oh, hame ka le lega. And then he just looked at her weird. He's like,
It's
he just ignored. Yeah, he just ignored her. So it's like there's these things that I'm sure like some people might have faced it, but I'm not 100% sure whether it comes from a place of a negative bias or is it just like something that people just say without thinking.
I feel like that situation sounds very negative.
Because I've also had in one of my old companies, I've also had this combating bias type of training. Where one of the questions there, and then for us to choose whether it's a bias or not, was, oh, if you're bringing out your lunch and one of your colleagues says, oh, is it curry? So
that's a very specific question.
Yeah. So at the end of it, I asked the person who was running the study, and I was like, hey, so did this actually happen in the Hong Kong office? They're like, oh no, this is not a Hong Kong office. It happened in the London office. So it's a true story that happened in the London office, not in Hong Kong.
There's a lot of brown people in London.
Yeah.
That's true. A lot of I mean, like, I think Asians in the UK would be like more referring to like Indians and South Asians.
But then at the same time, London, it's there's so many South Asians. It's actually almost like majority South Asian.
Well, this is why London has the best curry in the world. Maybe not in the world. Maybe someone's gonna like fight me on that. No.
Have your channel going down. Hold on.
Let's not go there.
Have you tried our mom's curry?
Yeah, we should invite her actually.
Yeah. I think once you try our mom's curry, you're gonna change your mind.
Oh
London or our mom.
Yeah, but that kind of relates to that like smelly lunch moments that a lot of like immigrant kids would have gone through, like everywhere. Yeah, I mean, that kind of reminded me, like, even in uni, like, in student accommodation, like, there will always be people who are like, oh, like, maybe on the 7th floor, the kitchen is always smelly because there's, like, an Indian guy who always cooks curry. Like, I don't know, like, every uni student accommodation that you go to in Hong Kong, someone is going to make a comment like that.
Yeah, there's always going to be something.
Yeah. But next one, wow. Is it true you can have 4 wives? Is it true?
I mean,
how do you know that?
Shh, that's our secret. I mean, from an Islamic perspective, yes, you can have 4 wives.
There's a caveat, though.
Yeah, like they all need to agree with each other. Like your first wife needs to agree that you'll have a second wife, and you need to be able to provide for every single one of them.
Well, equally. You're financially.
Wow.
Yes. So it comes with a lot of responsibility. And actually, it's not that it's endorsed. It's more that from the religious history, due to circumstances, our prophet had to take in more wives to take care of them. Some were widows and stuff. And so some people take it a little too literally, and if they can manage, sure, but I think one is good enough.
This economy?
Yeah, no way.
I think most of our listeners will agree that like managing one is already a lot.
Yeah.
I'd rather have a dog than
that's a Hong Kong story right there, man.
And the next one, do you personally know Nabila Quosa?
So this is a very specific.
Yeah, that was very.
She's a TVB presenter.
Yeah. So there was a moment, I think a couple of years ago, when this Pakistani TV presenter got really popular because she started to get on the news and she was doing full Cantonese news. Full Cantonese, like not even locals could compete with her.
On the
Cantonese.
TVB Cantonese channel,
Yes.
Right.
And so when she started getting popular, I remember people every day almost, they were like, do you know her? She's Pakistani. You know her, right? I'm like, yeah, sure. Like I had, I invited her over to our family dinner. Like we're cousins. Of course, I don't know her. Like just because we're Pakistanis, But I think that was quite interesting. I used to get that question a lot.
Interesting. I never had that.
Yeah, like for some reason,
even though
like,
your last name doesn't have.
I think it's more the aspect of the fact that I was speaking Cantonese with all of locals, and then they just associated with, I don't know many Pakistanis who speak Cantonese, so surely he must know her.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's only 2 people in Hong Kong that can speak, that are Pakistani and can speak Cantonese. You must be one of them.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, like that kind of like also relates to that immigrant experience where like, you know, at school, if there are only like 2 Asian kids and then people used to ask me, are you going to date that person?
Oh my God.
"Oh,
Don't
do you
even
know
go
that
there.
person? Are you related? Yeah. And next one, do you have to go back to your home country to get married?
What's up with these marriage questions?
You must feel really passionate about this.
I mean, because I've gotten these questions a lot. Seriously, I can't even. I would be a millionaire if I had
Really?
$1 for every time I got this asked.
I didn't know like people would ask these questions. Like, what were they thinking?
I think you know what from what I've learned is like people are always curious about these very commonly relatable topics about romance and marriage, right? And yeah, these kind of questions would always come up, and then I would have to explain like, no, I mean I'm born and raised here, so how am I gonna get along with someone from there? I'm not even culturally that attuned to the Pakistani way of things. I know some people do go back to Pakistan to find a wife. Arranged marriage is still a very prevalent and common thing. I also do believe that arranged marriage is a very successful way also a lot of times to have a marriage done because you know you don't have a lot of hassle. Actually it makes your life easier because you don't really need to
It's like it's
find
the guy
someone.
or the
for
partner
certain
has
types of
been
people,
filtered
Yeah.
by.
There's a whole Netflix show about all that. Like, it's
matchmaking.
Indian matchmaking
Oh.
or something.
Yeah. So one thing I don't know if you are aware of this, but in the South Asian community, matchmaking is a huge profitable business.
Wow.
That's how our parents.
Yeah, that's how they got married.
They got
Wow.
married. Yeah.
I mean, our parents didn't even meet each other.
Oh yeah, until the day they got. What do you
Yeah,
call that?
I think married because our grandparents went to Pakistan, and our dad was still in Hong Kong, he was working and stuff, and they were like working with a matchmaker, finding someone for their son. And when they saw my mom and my grandma, like, yep, she's the one. And then I think they just informed our dad that we found someone for you.
Next week, come to Pakistan.
Yeah, something like that. We found someone for you. And so they kind of, I think, exchanged rings over the mail.
Oh wow.
I think.
Really?
I think. Yeah. Or no, actually, our grandparents put the ring on our mom on behalf of our dad.
And after all these years, still.
Yeah. And
going
they
strong.
shared love letters at that time, even without having met each other.
wow.
I think everything was based off of like one photograph.
Photograph, yeah.
One photograph. Yeah. So that is, I think if I remember correctly, I have been asked that question a couple of times as well. And yeah, I have to also explain to them like, look, you know, it's not a requirement that everyone has to be arranged marriage.
Yeah.
Like you can make exceptions. Also for us, we're growing up in this, you know, this city that has like people from all over the world. So the chances of us being arranged marriage is like not that high anymore.
Yeah, but also like definitely depends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For certain type of people, it works.
So you don't follow like maybe some of the customs because one of my former colleagues, she told me like she's from Pakistan and she told me like, oh, when they're maybe arranging meetings for like potential marriage partners, like whether or not the girl serves tea to the guy, like
So
it's kind of like an indication of affection, and if the
Yeah.
girl serves tea, then
It's
Yeah.
like
whole
it's a
like
done deal,
It's
right?
like a
Yeah.
performance.
Yeah, but then like you guys don't follow these, like you just freely make eye contact, take teas from everyone.
We don't make eye contact freely, you know.
And there is definitely like if we're, let's say like when, for example, like for you and your wife when you're at home, you still have to maintain certain level of like decency,
As
respect,
in when
and like in
we're
terms of
at our family,
at our
home.
parents, right?
Yeah.
So like you know, it's they're still there to a certain degree,
When
but
they're elders in the room.
yeah.
Right.
There you still have to kind of
Yeah.
follow certain what do you call them?
Etiquette.
Etiquette.
Especially because we are Pashtuns. So Pashtuns are a group of people from more like the northern region of Pakistan. The Pashtun language and the culture comes from Afghanistan. So it's quite a tribal type of group of people that maintains tribal structures in a lot of villages. And so that also means that like things like showing affection in front of your family members and stuff is not really common. And this is something I only recently, I think last year or something, I looked into it because I was like looking into Pashtun love songs. I was just curious what there is out there, you know. And then I went into a deep rabbit hole of Reddit and like people discussing like and stuff. And there's like articles.
There's a Reddit
and stuff.
thread.
I've done a whole like tree researching into the Pashtun lineage as well.
Yeah.
There is actually a king with my name. A king, with my
Adil?
name. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, your name is made up. It doesn't really exist.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I'll be the first king then.
It's good to be the first.
Yeah.
I see. Wow. And finally, we've reached the last question of rapid bias.
I wonder what that is.
Where is Pakistan on the map?
You can take that one.
Yeah, I've heard that many times. And that one's like, it's interesting, right? Because when you explain that, you kind of have to go into a little bit of a history lesson too, and tell people that, look, Pakistan wasn't just there. It was part of India first. Like it was first just India.
And then that would confirm, oh, so you're Indian.
Like,
put yourself in
that's
that.
why you're the same. So yeah, it is like you do have to explain a little bit of that. And then then they would ask you the follow-up question like, oh, so then can somebody be Indian and Pakistani?
You can.
Like, and the answer is yes. Like there are still some people who were in that era when right before the separation of India and Pakistan, right? So they're still Indian, but they're still Muslim, and then they moved to Pakistan, and they're Pakistani as well. So there's all that kind of mix. But I think for us, it's really just telling them, look, it's right next to India.
Yeah.
Just Google Map
Yeah,
that.
just Google Map that. I know it's small. Might be hard to see, but it's definitely bigger than Hong Kong.
Nice, nice. And with that, we conclude our rapid fires segment. And for us to conclude the episode, I just have a couple of quick questions for you. Obviously, we're doing a Proudly Asian shared Spotify playlist where we have our guests and our listeners contribute their songs to the playlist. So what will be your additions?
I would go for Brown Munde. It's a artist from Canada, AP Dillon. The song is literally talking about the fact that you're brown boys. So it's a pretty cool song. Like, you should listen to it when you have time.
We'll
Brown
check it
Munde.
out.
I think I'd just go. I think
that.
that's very appropriate as well.
And you?
So I'm gonna have to go with.
Come on, man.
It's a song by Glass Animals.
Just trying so hard to think about it. You listen to this all the
I
time.
know, that's true. It's a Glass Animals song. Glass Animals, they're a British band. The song from them that I think I would want to put out there is Waterfalls Coming Out of My Mouth. I think just visually, it just it's just something that I relate to a lot in terms of like just having that alternative world where you could just say whatever's on your mind, which is something obviously like being here you might not always get to do that. So I always just imagine like a waterfall coming out of a skull of mine. That's a pineapple head because pineapple's their signature fruit.
Nice. I love that. So
Wait, what about your song though?
Yeah.
I'm
Oh my!
curious.
I already added a lot on the playlist, so
Yeah,
you
but-
have to check out the playlist.
But yeah, sure, I will check that. But from today's mood,
Yeah.
Ooh,
That can
today.
change.
I mean, since I just came back from Japan, and
right.
through the process, I discovered this band called Creepy Nuts.
Okay.
Creepy nut.
Yeah, they have some really like viral hits on social media these
What
days.
genre is it?
I think it's like rap. But like very kind of there's I mean like they rap a lot, but then there's kind of like that really like modern tone to it. I mean I don't describe my music very well, so
Is there
I
a
would-
specific song by Creepy Nuts?
wait, let me let me
Nice
Google that.
question.
Like it's like when I play it, like you guys might have heard of it.
It's possible.
This one I actually heard a lot, but I did not realize it was by them.
Okay.
Let
You
me
know, it's
play
interesting because with Glass Animals too, there was a phase when I first listened to them back when I was working at Abercrombie and Fitch. I hated.
Oh my god, you're one of
fun
the
fact, he's a
Abercrombie.
Abercrombie and
Well,
Fitch
you
guy.
you were too.
No,
Get out of here. Both of us were.
I worked
Oh,
overnight shift.
I was. Oh,
There was more money
You
there.
were the one standing at the
No, no, no.
entrance, like taking photos with
I was
people.
the closing shift. Right before his shift.
So just to, I don't know.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Oh, it's something I feel like our little sister would love to dance to.
And then wait for the chorus part. I think like that one is.
Oh, that's. Do you work out to this?
Well, yeah, you could definitely.
I do Pilates, so I can't.
With Pilates.
It's pretty cool. They have like a few tunes
Wow.
that are quite catchy. Yeah.
All right. I think I should add that to my list.
Yeah. That could make for a
Yeah.
good workout music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, typically for my process of making videos and working on a video project, usually music is the first part of the process.
You think of, and then you add it to the music.
you have
right?
you let the
Yeah.
music, kind of create the visuals
Yeah.
that you want to follow. Without that, if you do it the other way around, oh my god, it's so hard. It's so tough.
It's like I literally had this part everywhere in Japan, and
Really?
those like shoe stores, and I was like, "Oh, what is this song?"
What is this?
And then later on, I realized, oh, it's by this like up and coming, or not just up and coming. I think they're quite popular
Yeah.
already.
The Japanese music industry is very unique.
Yeah.
Like the artists that are coming out and the music that they're making, and I think there's an artist that who was in an orchestra as well, and he plays a cello, and he was really good at it, and then now he's part of a band as well.
Oh.
King Nu, I think. King
Oh.
Nu is the band name. Yo, the music they make is great. I think Japanese music industry is
Yeah. Hopefully,
definitely.
J-pop is making a comeback. I think.
I hope
Yeah,
so.
coming
it
back.
should.
Yeah.
It's,
'Cause it was
everything's cyclical, right?
Yeah, like it
It's
used to be
K-pop,
J-pop, K-pop,
Yeah.
and then maybe J-pop is coming
Canto
back.
pop might come back too.
Hey,
I hope
man.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
The good old days.
Yeah.
the good old days, like Leslie Chung,
Mm.
Anita Moy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not Mirror, right?
I have to be. It's gonna offend a lot of people. I have not heard like one song.
Are you even a Hong Konger?
This is gonna send me into identity crisis for the night.
Oops, just watch this one episode when you feel that.
And well, before we go, like, I mean, you're fluent in Cantonese, so I'm really curious, like, what will be your favorite Cantonese phrase?
Oh my god, I am terrible. My memory is so bad, especially when it comes to stuff like this, because I can't remember stuff until somebody says it. Then I'm like, oh
yeah,
it was
yeah,
that one.
Yeah.
And
How do you have
know,
one?
at lunch, during work, I was asking my colleagues, local colleagues, I'm like, so what is your favorite Cantonese phrase? I don't think even local people are able to answer you that question right away.
Yeah.
Oh, not in the workplace.
Yeah, because I was not going to go there, but most of them are bad, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe
But they are kind of endearing as well, the
Yeah.
bad words.
Yeah.
I must say though, I mean, I don't know. This is not really like.
No,
Canto
it's not.
phrase,
It's not like a
but
clean.
I am obsessed with Canto sort of creativity with foul language.
Oh yeah.
Like
What?
the way they just kind of find such creative ways to insult you. Like they don't just insult you; they will go back to your generation. They will say stuff like, "I hope you don't have a new year," stuff like that. I think there's a common one that's something about like 16 or 18 generations of bad luck or something.
Whoa,
Like that. Yeah, yeah.
damn.
dear.
It's insane.
That's mad.
Yeah.
Cantonese
Yeah.
has no chills.
I mean, there are the first phrases that I learned when I was in uni was things like "siu hao gai" or "dai mo."
What does that mean?
Dai mo is like when you get cheated on, like
Oh.
somebody put a hat on you, basically.
Actually, you know what? But cheated on. What I've heard is sikchula.
Really?
Sikchu is kind of like, well, eat a banana.
Yeah.
Which is like, oh, you got cheated on, so you're just gonna be.
Oh, I thought that was just like, oh, you messed up or something.
Yeah.
Like, 'cause
It
I
could-
mean,
I
like,
think it could be used in a sense of like you got rejected or something.
right? Because during my era, it's like it's not really like Chinese, but it's like oh, GG.
GG. Oh yeah.
It's like
Yeah, that's from like that's a gamer slang.
yeah.
That is a gamer
Yeah.
slang. I mean,
yeah, it's
you would
like
know.
some people,
Yeah.
oh, GG la, tomorrow
GG
is
la.
an exam or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah.
Or like tappy.
What-
Tappy.
What is that? That's
like
a new one.
I don't know if it's a HKU term, but then like it's like, oh yeah, you want to go to the library to tappy, as in like just chill, do nothing.
That sounds very specific.
That's very new.
Yeah, but they. I don't think people use it now. So like if you say that, it's
Mm.
gonna like expose your age.
So you just
The Gen Z are gonna be like what's that?
yeah. How do you
think-
keep up with the slangs?
I remember our dad has used this one quite often. He said, 雞同鴨講.
Oh,
I think that's the saying.
it's like like two people
Yes,
speaking different languages.
But nothing is getting across
Yeah.
because
Right, right. Oh yeah, I like that one.
that's quite an old school one though.
I think like that made the cover of like a recent Hong Kong slang book that like
Oh.
yeah, one of a friend of my friends like published. So like
cool.
that cover is like it's literally like the book's title is like Hong Kong slangs or something, and then it's a picture of like a chicken and a duck.
Oh,
Oh,
really?
wow.
Hey,
Wow.
I actually would love to get my
Yeah,
hands on that one.
Yeah. Bookazine.
Yeah.
Bookazine,
Oh, Bookazine.
okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
that's close by.
Yeah. And well, with that, we have reached almost the end of the episode. So finally, I would like to ask you a very philosophical question.
Whoa.
What does it mean to be proudly Pakistani Hong Konger to you?
That's a tough question.
I know it could go on for hours.
Yes,
Like, once
it
we
has
start.
been going on for hours.
This might be the longest recording we've had.
I think I've got something. I've got something cooking in here.
Let
I
it cook.
think I think I think being proudly Pakistani means that you might growing up you might not understand why things are the way they are in terms of your upbringing, in terms of the way your parents are towards you. But at the end of the day, you have to learn to love yourself. You have to remember that, you as a person have endless opportunities to do things and, explore yourself. You're not stuck in the place that you are. But you would need to take that leap of faith. You have to trust the people around you. You have to go out and build your support system outside of your family, because maybe they might not understand who you truly are, and there might be people outside who would understand you better. So don't shy away from that, but also be proud that you come from a unique place, and that holds that can put you in a spot where if you can combine that with other skills and other sort of elements of your personality, you are going to be remembered. But you have to really, put yourself out there and, trust that, every day you put a little bit of work in, you'll be able to get that perfect blend.
It's kind of like you take the control to tell the world who you really are instead of the world deciding by looking at what you look like, what you speak, where you're from.
Yeah.
Right.
I think if I had to answer that question, I'd say from the Hong Konger side, the hustle culture, and like the fast pacedness of things.
What a sleep.
Right?
Yeah.
And then from the Pakistani side, Pakistanis are known to be the most hospitable people, and very kind people, And I think blending those two is what probably means to be Pakistani Hong Kong.
I
Amazing.
agree.
I really love like hearing about your experiences during this episode, because like you put a really it was quite positive for you guys growing up as well. You put a very positive spin on your growing up experiences, and I love those moments when you shared how you maybe just like decided to take control over a certain situation in terms of embracing Cantonese, picking what you would be pursuing professionally, making career pivots. You always take back that power to change the outcomes for yourself. So I really love hearing about everything that you just talked about, and I wish we had more time. And if you would like, I would love to have you guys back as like guest hosts.
Sure, why
We'll
not?
talk about like some random topics. Maybe next time we'll talk about marriage.
Yeah.
No, this was. I mean, I think it was probably the first time we got to really talk,
Yeah.
more openly about ourselves.
Thank you so much for having
Yeah,
us.
wouldn't be possible if you didn't create the environment for
Yeah.
us.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for stopping by. And I hope we'll get to chat
Absolutely.
very soon again.
Inshallah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Isabel.
That's it for this episode of Proudly Asian. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at proudly.asian for more content. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review on wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in and signing off for now. I'm Isabel Wong.